What's up, YouTube? We're back with the 19th episode of the 5D Warrior podcast. I'm John, here with my co-host
Corey,
and today we're getting into all things God, all things consciousness, all things mindfulness, all things suffering, and how to avoid suffering through all of those practices.
mindfulness is key to avoiding suffering and understanding where attachment comes from. Because we form labels and attachments to these things in our daily life, and ultimately only our attachments cause our suffering.
Yeah, indeed. And through practicing mindfulness in every aspect of your life, you will then incorporate no suffering and God into your life. Because we talk about God in the sense of consciousness, in the idea that everything is God, and Corey and I are God, and you guys are God. But we're not really practicing those God-like practices every single day in all facets of our life. We're only practicing them maybe 1 hour a day on Sunday or Saturday on our religious days. But then you leave that church or that temple or that mosque and you go home and you immediately forget everything you learned or were taught that day in good faith, and you lose that aspect of God because you're thinking of God as outside of yourself versus looking in and seeing God in all aspects.
Seeing God in everything. That's what it's all about. Because if you're able to not only recognize God once a week or during your 30-minute meditation every day, but trying to use that meditation or that church visit or whatever spiritual practice or religious practice you're using and applying it throughout everything and seeing the world as yourself, treating others as if they're God. Because how would you treat God if you were talking to him to your face?
Yes.
And you like to look at other people as God in drag, Ramdas says. And God in drag. So
God
when you
in drag.
Yes, so if I'm talking to you, say we get into an argument. This is just God in drag. He's trying to push my buttons, and he's pushing me away from singularity, because when you're noticing everything as God and God as yourself, you're very close to singularity, and everything is just God in drag, pushing you away from that truth.
I like that, because that makes sense. And like other people, when you start viewing other people as God, you essentially will stop experiencing that God in drag, because you won't let others bring you down and drag you away from your true nature. Like a lot of people go out every day and look at everyone else as other than themselves, and like look down on people or pass judgment. Like when you don't stop passing judgment and start treating people as if they were yourself, you lose that drag, I guess. Because like if I was arguing with you, like you said, and you just came to terms with, okay, like that's just me projecting my emotions onto you, and then rather you're not receiving those emotions, those negative emotions, and acting on them. You just come to terms with it and are okay with it and just let it project and don't let it mess up your emotions.
Because ultimately everything you're experiencing in the external world is a reflection of how you are internally. And if you're viewing other person as God, you're viewing yourself internally as God as well. So when you see somebody else as angry and you're perceiving it and their anger is angering you, you're feeding off of that energy. That you stray away from the realization and the truth that you're only experiencing yourself. Because you let that separateness, the illusion of separation, that other person irritate you, but if that other person is yourself, who
they
you argue
won't. Yeah, if you experience others as yourselves, you'll never get irritated. You'll never experience those low vibrations, because like no one wants to be operating in low vibrations. Like most people with like things like the ego and stuff, like most people view themselves as better than the rest. So like when you stop experiencing that and projecting that onto others, you'll bring God into every aspect of your life. And Corey's fat ass. But you'll start experiencing God in all aspects of your life, all facets, and use that and bring that into mindfulness practices during your day. Like many people, everyone eats every day, everyone cooks every day, but are you mindful in the cooking of what energy you're putting into your body? Like for example, like
cooking with love.
Cooking with love actually has health benefits on you because you're putting food is God, just like all things are God, all things energy. God is an energy, right? When you put that love, when you give thanks to your food and express gratitude and show your food love, and then you put that good energy into your body, you'll essentially manipulate the vibrational state of your being and bring it into higher vibrations. Same things with, like, you hear people say, oh, thank your water, right, before you drink it. Because by you thanking and putting out words that have high vibrational qualities onto your water, and you project it onto the water, it actually changes the frequency and the vibrational energy field
Like
of
the
the
one
water.
experiment they did, and they yelled at water. They yelled these different things or said these different things to the water, and then they freeze the molecules. And you could actually see at the molecular level how these different sacred geometries were ingrained into the water. And when they yelled angry things at it and derogatory things at it, you could see the chaotic patterns that it formed. But then when they had messages of love and thanks and gratefulness, you could see that the more concise, I guess you could say beautiful, same way that no snowflake is unique, nothing in this world is unique, nothing is exactly the same. And
Everything is unique.
everything is unique.
Not.
My bad. I worded that wrong.
Everything. No, so one snowflake is like another, essentially, and no being is like another. And I saw a quote, I forget who it's from, but it was essentially, you would call yourself a human being, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of humans are just humans because they're not being, right? In order to incorporate, I think it was Aubrey Marcus actually, when you start looking at yourself as a being and you practice that mindfulness and that bringing God into all aspects of your life, then, only then you will start being, and then you could call yourself a human being. Because most people just wake up, go to their 9 to 5, eat some shitty food, and then go watch Netflix and sedate themselves from their true reality, and then continue the cycle over and over again until you die. And then if we want to bring into the fact, Eastern philosophy, like you were telling me, Ram Dass, like they love death. They embrace death.
We're scared of death.
We have a
in the
negative
Western.
connotation towards death, and like the Western religion pushes that onto us. Because like, I was watching Jackass last night, bro. Jackass 4.5 on Netflix, right? And the one guy, Dark Shark, who's a Crip gangbanger, like was in jail for. They put him on a plane and made him skydive, right? And this guy like thought he was gonna die and shit, and the whole time he's falling, he's like, God, like I'm sorry, like calling out to God, like he thought he was gonna die, like please, like forgive me, all this shit, right? And like that is not doing anything for him, but it's just funny how like he at the last second before his death, then he wanted to give praise to God, right?
That's when you experience it most.
But you shouldn't be when you do it like that. You're just completely like there's nothing godlike about that.
And the thing about death is, we look at death as if we're losing something. All the attachments and the labels that we've assigned to ourselves, these stories that we tell ourselves, and when we die, it's the illusion of losing that. And it's not that doesn't exist anymore, but it's that we associated ourselves so closely to what we think we are. We think that we're going to lose that when we die, but we really just evolve into something so much more pure, because we lost the pureness with these labels that we attach.
Yeah, like this phone. I gotta pick this phone.
Yeah.
Or we saw the video today of the dude and how our phones give off electromagnetic frequencies that are negative for us because they have electrical currencies. And the guy plugged this without this doesn't really give off that high of an EMF radiation.
But when you have it plugged in next to your head at night,
to a 2 to 400 volt electrical outlet through your phone charger and plug it into the wall, now you have this high electrical current going through your body, right? And you put the phone, and it's just right next to you, and its electrical field is projecting it onto your body and messing with your state of being. And then you pick it up while it's on the charger, and you put it next to your head. You're getting all of these bad, like EMF, all this radiation straight into your head for however long you're on the phone, right? Maybe an hour at a time. Or you put the phone charged next to your head before you go to sleep. You fall asleep with the phone right next to your head, and all night you're just getting these low vibrations into your body, and it's manipulated. It's bringing your energy field down, and things like the 5G too.
protecting your
energy. Who's behind the 5G? Who? Who's it, bro?
Who is it?
Klaus Schwab.
Klaus Schwab.
Bill Gates, all those people promoting the 5G as per the Great Reset. That's a whole other part.
That's a whole part of it.
They want us in 5G cities because if you're in a city like things like New York, you're constantly in a low vibration because there's none of this
you
shit.
can't connect. You've seen Liver King's video, him in New York. Got to connect in New York, and he's finding little
with
spots.
this stuff.
Connect. And we've lost it.
Oh.
Yo, I'm breaking this bench.
Yo,
I'm gonna move up.
badass, dude.
But like we lost that connection. Like people don't take their shoes off. Like this is dirty.
Yeah.
People got to keep the
Oh,
J's
it's
clean.
too dirty, bro.
It's dirty. Like
You're a clown, bro. You're stepping on God. If you think this is dirty, like why is it dirty? Why do people
It's
call
that
it
lit.
dirty, bro?
you are.
Why this isn't dirty. This isn't identifying as being dirt. Do you think the plants identify as being dirty?
No, they're alive just as you are.
They're love. They identify with love. They're at the highest state of their beingness in their first dimension.
Think about that. We had Eric on the podcast, and he talked about like, be the tree. Be the tree, because the tree is simply being.
Should I hug the tree?
Should I we can do a little tree hugging if you want? It might be out of frame, but
Like, say thank you to the tree. You think this is radical? You think this is radical to be hugging the tree, but I'm really just expressing God, right? I'm giving thanks to this tree, connecting with this. This tree's grounded. I'm not grounded. No one's grounded during the day.
rooted.
They're rooted. This
think about
tree
the
is
roots.
alive.
The roots in a tree. A tree should represent you, being grounded in nature, but also reaching for the sky and trying to experience it all.
All right, so back to the trees are God, right? They're experiencing oneness amongst themselves, amongst us. There's like Coco the gorilla.
Oh,
Coco the gorilla who learned sign language, right? And at his death or her death, I'm not sure. I think it's a girl. I think Coco's a girl. Regardless, doesn't matter, right? Because Coco practices oneness. Like Coco is nature. Coco says humans are dumb because we are like we're chopping down our trees and the lungs of the earth to go live in 5G cities, bro. It's craziness. We're taking ourselves away from true reality, true God-like beingness. Like, you can't be a human being in a 5G city. You could only be a human. You could only be a slave to the global power structure.
when you're in the cities, you're disconnected.
Disconnected
From
completely.
disconnected from
My
God.
mom's telling me today, because my allergies are bad. She's telling me today, oh, I never had allergies when I grew up in the city because there's no pollen. There's no trees in the city to create pollen, right? She came here she moved to New Jersey by the ocean for the first time when she was like in her late 20s, 30s, and then she experienced all these bad allergies. But for the first time, she was finally like connected and surrounded by nature. Like that's really so bad. That's why people in cities, there's more crime in cities. There's way more, everything's lower vibration in the cities because people are completely disconnected.
When you go camping, you go on a hike, and you just feel that connection or disconnect from modern society. It's almost weird. When we went camping the first time, we stayed out there for a night. Do you remember when we went?
Right?
No, well, we went back to society after a day.
Yeah.
You remember when we went to get lunch somewhere at the Chick-fil-A?
At the hell's that shit called?
on the Parkway.
The rest stop.
The rest stop on the Parkway.
Chick-fil-A
And-
in the middle of Pennsylvania.
And
on the highway.
we just connected beautifully to what was around us. And we're swimming in the river water, in the cold water, and had our shoes off. And we go in
Doing
there, and
4-mile
you're just feeling the LED lights that are on the ceiling, and the low vibration people that are coming through there, getting a pack of cigarettes and filling up on fast food. I mean, we were filling up on fast food, but just feeling the different energies around you at all time. And people talk about seeing auras, and it's not fake. Like when you start to really tap in and connect through meditation and grounding and breath work, you start to develop intuition in cities, they call them in Indian culture.
Yeah, not
Wh-
cities as in like New York City, like the cities, like SIDDIS, I believe.
SIDDHIS, yes.
HIS.
So those are these different spiritual powers that you begin to gain. Like you've seen videos of monks setting stuff on fire with their hands, and
Telekinesis.
levitating, telekinesis. All these different powers are fully attainable when you clear your mind and you connect. And you start to see that in other beings. When you see the aura, it's almost as if you're seeing another soul. You're not looking at another person. You're looking at
Because we're
another
not our
soul.
bodies. You're looking at another soul, and then you can develop like clairvoyance as well. Clairvoyance is the idea that like I can connect to like your mind,
Yes.
or like other people's mind, and experience what they're doing for myself as a projection of my God consciousness, and connecting with another God consciousness. For example, you were telling Corey listens to a lot of Ram Dass,
Ram Dass and
Mahariji, and tell him the story of the donut.
Oh, so Ram Dass was
And,
leaving.
and then you could tell him the story.
Ram Dass was leaving the airport, or he was going to get his green card restored in whatever country. He was in the mosque for, I believe, 4 months at the time. And he traveled to the airport to renew his green card. And he was on his way home, and he was walking barefoot. He said he felt holy, and everybody was bowing to him, saying, "Your holiness," and he went in for lunch. And when you're that holy, he says, you got to eat very slowly and act as if you don't enjoy it. And he was making jokes out of it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Just because like you're applying mindfulness to everything, so you're just like slowly experiencing each bite of food.
Oh, and
and
it,
the
like,
pickup.
You're just projecting that it looks like
Yes.
unhappy. It's not actually.
Yes, exactly. He's just super focused and intent. But he says after the meal, they put Danishes on the table, biscuits, and he said, "Oh, a holy person wouldn't eat that Danish, wouldn't eat that biscuit." But he said, "I deserve it," and he grabbed it and he stuffed it in his pocket so nobody saw, and he ate it on the way out. And when he got back to the mosque, the temple or monastery, wherever he was, and Mahariji was in his chair, he said, "How'd you enjoy the biscuit?" And Ram Dass was, "How did you know? How did you know?" And he has many other stories about how Mahariji, among other spiritual teachers that he's worked closely with, but his guru, were able to connect and see him on a plane separate from this one and observe him through him. And that's the thing, because you are him. And Mahariji was able to see,
Project himself.
and understand what Ram Dass
Yeah.
did. But
And then
it's interesting.
What about that guy? What's that guy's name? You were telling me also another, I would
I'm not-
assume Hindu guru type guy. That,
I'm not sure his name.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
That
I'm not
had-
sure his name, but he had medallions, and everybody that came to visit him, he would poof a medallion into his hand like a magician, but it wasn't a magic trick. He had a medallion in his hand with his face on it, and he poofed it in his hand, and purple smoke or blue smoke, Ram Dass said, and handed it to him. And he said, and Ram Dass said to one of his devotees, like, how does he create those, and why does it look like it was made in China? It's like a crappy medallion. He said, "Oh, he doesn't make them. He prints them up, but then he teleports them from the warehouse right into his hand," which is just a funny little story about a different city. Like, whether that story is 100% true, but
the city that he could manipulate the medallion's energy field and like literally teleport it.
because
to
he
himself.
has it.
Whether that's true or not,
What-
but that is like what they say is as one of like the superpowers.
I would
of
say that
practice.
story is true.
I would agree that it's
I don't
true.
think Ram Dass is capping.
Ram Dass doesn't lie. It tells me God doesn't tell lies. Right?
No.
So then you could talk about what was I gonna say? Same thing like yes, Matthias De Stefano. I love this story about Matthias was doing a healing session in a druid's temple in Scotland, I believe, and he was dressed in like a cloak, and he was at this druid's temple, and it was like essentially like a little circle of like stones, almost like a Stonehenge type temple, right? Doing a healing ceremony. He's in his cloak, and at this druid's temple, they talk about like Merlin like practiced here, like Merlin, like the wizard, yeah, right? So he's healing, and he says that he connected with the spirit of Merlin, or the energy consciousness of Merlin, and he's standing there with a bowl of herbs, and he needs to light the herbs to sage them to heal the people, right?
But they don't have anything.
But
to
he
light.
has no lighter, and God wouldn't use a lighter, right? No one that's high in holiness would be using a lighter. So essentially, Matthias is standing there with the bowl in his hands, and he needs to light this, but he doesn't know how. But Merlin is projecting through him, almost like Ra, how
Ra talks through
a
Kali,
consciousness can project themselves.
Think
into
about the
yours.
poltergeist,
Yeah.
these spirits that possess you, but in a positive.
Yeah, in a positive way. So then Mateus, his consciousness is talking to Merlin, and he's like, yo, like, I can't light this. And Merlin's like, yes, you can. And then essentially Mateus just speaks out in lights, or in light, yeah, and light.
Light, I think.
And then, but that's really Merlin talking, and light, and all the herbs just went up in flames. And like Mateus didn't light it, he didn't have anything to light it with. And it was like one of those superpower, like weird things, like Mateus doesn't even know how it happened, it just happened. Like higher consciousness was projected through him and like manipulated our reality using his like energy. That's just another story. That's like
because that
a
energy
weird
is,
little thing.
Yeah, that
Like
energy is at our disposal. We just feel disconnected.
Yeah, it's a
from it.
little just like another. That's essentially a city.
Think
too.
about children, how they're so pure and singular and connected to everything, and they're not disconnected in any way. They've had
just-
less time to be socialized.
Yeah,
and-
they just came from spirit, so
Exactly.
they're extremely insightful
So-
and connected with everything.
That's a funny point because I feel like our connection with spirit goes, you're very connected as a child, and then you start to gain all these attachments and truths that you tell yourself, and then by the time you die, you should start letting them go. Think about old people, how they don't care about anything. I mean, not all of them, but a good amount of old people don't tend to hold attachments to a lot of things, and it starts dissipating, and hopefully you can get to that level of singularity by the time you pass that you were when you came into this world, just pure.
And
They
then
come
you
out of
be
the womb
conscious of it,
crying
yeah.
because it's the scariest thing they've ever experienced. It's new.
Or they're crying because they just realized they came to this earth plane and forget everything they just knew.
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing to me, because like they say like,
The veil of forgetting.
Earth's like the forgetting school. We come here to remember like our everything, right? But like I always contemplate this, like how our parents met, right, and then like had us, and like the whole like science behind it, like how we came to become born into this world. But there's the whole spirit aspect of it that like my parents creating me, like my conscious, they created my body, right? My two parents created my body for who I look like, but then my soul had to then choose my parents and choose my body. Like that's like a weird thing to me.
Your soul family. These people that you're supposed to meet along the way, because we've talked about free will and the illusion of free will, but you essentially choose this life before you come here. Maybe not in a literal sense, but this suffering would be good in this lifetime. You look at it before, this would be very good for the soul development. Like, what if our souls had that spiritual ego too? Like, maybe I'll give myself super strict parents and see how that works out. How about a girlfriend? How about a girlfriend at 30 that cheats on me? That suffering would be really good for my spiritual development.
Yeah.
Like these different things that could maybe propel us on this path that we're on and becoming.
Yeah, like we didn't know at 6 years old when we met in first grade that like 15 years down the line, we'd be making a podcast about consciousness. Like we didn't know that, but we were obviously put on this earth to experience it together, and everyone you meet is put on this earth. You were supposed to meet them because even if you meet them for a hot minute or 5 minutes, like they'll teach you something in those 30 seconds that you're with them.
Whether they teach it to you verbally or you understand the lesson from it, everything can be taken as a lesson, understanding.
Everything's a learning experience.
We're just the experiencers and witnessing this body and witnessing this mind to go through this life, this dance that we have. We're the dance of life. We have the gift of experiencing it. And we start attaching our being to this flesh vehicle in the mind that goes on in our head. We start attaching it. But when you can just observe it and see it for what it is, you start to see the dance of life. Ram Dass talks about
And the dance is not just subject to this earth plane, it's subject for infinity, right?
Yep.
Different planes of existence eternally because our souls are eternal.
Okay.
And like the only way to continue to go on and expand our consciousness is to practice mindfulness in this 3D plane of existence, in the third dimension.
Using this third dimension as a learning platform,
tool.
a launch pad up to the higher dimensions of reality. Because think about how many different dimensions of reality we can access through this third dimension. Meditation and astral projection and sleep, your dreams. That's another plane of existence as well. Psychedelic drugs, dimethyltryptamine, magical mushrooms, psilocybin. All these different things open you up to higher planes of reality. We accessing all of them from this grounded third plane right now, which is a very interesting.
Yeah, we could perceive them. You could bring those higher planes of existence into this reality with all those things, and then it maybe like we were talking about practicing these godlike practices in all aspects, and then bringing the cities into your life. You start gaining intuition. You start experiencing energy everywhere, and start experiencing love in all things you do, and that's the way to project your consciousness and level up your soul in a sense.
But the thing is also, we'll get caught up on the spiritual path because we look at it as the spiritual path. Where does it lead? Does it lead to liberation? Does it lead to enlightenment? But the spiritual path is the path. It's just you're walking the path, but no destination. You're kind of wandering, dancing, and enjoying the show, but there's no place we're going to get from it.
Yeah, because the path is just us here right now.
Us here right now.
We
That's
can
all
sit
there
here for
is.
the rest of our lives. Nothing different is going to happen. Like this is the presence is the path. Presence is the God consciousness.
Right here,
Right now.
Be here now.
Be here now, Ram Dass. Shout out Ram Dass.
And-
Always gotta shout out Ram Dass.
Yeah. Always gotta shout out Ram Dass. And
Always gotta shout out.
are we calling anybody out?
Yeah, we'll call some people out. We just made our first TikTok call out. We called out Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, but we could call out different people on this podcast.
We've already called them out on this podcast.
Yeah, we've called them out multiple. They're always a call out. We'll call out who's really been grinding my gears lately.
Have we called out Jen Psaki?
No, I don't think so.
Alright.
Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, she's a lizard for sure. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. She'd be covering for Biden all the time. All the time she'd be covering for Biden. She'd be lying to the American people, the American public.
She knows what's good.
She'd be standing up for all the global policies that her administration be projecting onto us to try to steal our freedom. So Jen Psaki, we're calling you out, you goddamn lizard. But yeah, Jen Psaki will live infinitely in the spiritual plane.
She'll learn. Maybe not this life.
She'll have to learn one day. You'll learn one day. You'll repent, Jen Psaki.
I am you, Jen Psaki.
We are you, Jen Psaki. I hope the best for you. Yeah, you gotta...
we have this eternal life.
Yeah.
We're floating through dimensions. This is just one of thousands and thousands of millions of lives we've lived. Think about it like this. If there was a 6,000-foot tall mountain and a bird flew by holding a feather in its beak or in its claws every year it flew over and it scraped the top of the mountain once, for that mountain to be completely flat from just the bird scratching is how many lives we've lived.
Yeah, right.
That's an infinite amount of time.
Infinite amount of time. Jen Psaki, I'm sending you love, but you gotta repent and straighten out your actions.
Step up your game.
Step up, get conscious, Jen Psaki. But that's all the time we have on this podcast
Because
today.
Unfortunately,
why is it
our lives are infinite.
But this podcast is not.
This podcast is not infinite.
So thank you for watching. We'll be back with episode 20 within the next week.
Within the next week.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Hey.
We're going to the 5D.